50 years ago, the game was easy. If you wanted to earn a good living, if you wanted to have enough money to feed a family, to get ahead in life, all you had to do is to study, maybe study engineering, study something useful, and then take those studies, get a job, stay with the company for a while, stay with it potentially for decades, get good salary in the meantime, and feed your family, right? This is all you had to do. You just had to study and join a good company and stick with that company. Now, things have changed, right? If you nowadays study, if you now get a degree, you don't necessarily get a good job. Even if you do get a good job, you still have to work 70, 80, 90 hours. And even with that, it's not necessarily a given that you can easily feed a family. So things have changed. Salaries have gone down, relatively speaking, to capital incomes. So when you look at the monetary expansion, when you look at how much is USM2 growing over time, it's roughly 7% per annum. When you look at salary increases year over the last 50 years, that was 4 to 5%. So every year it gets around 2 to 3% harder for everyone. And so the common advice we would give to our children, right? Just study hard, join university, find a good job. That advice doesn't really work anymore. Nowadays, we have to use the capitalistic system in a smarter way. We can't just sell our labor. We have to actually use capital. We have to save, and we have to save in something that tends to beat monetary expansion. Now, gold does not necessarily beat monetary expansion, right? It grows less than 7% per annum. It might grow by 2 to 3%, so you can still buy the same kind of consumer goods 20, 30 years from now. But if you save in gold and you want to then convert this maybe into a house, you will fall behind over time. So saving in gold makes no sense. Saving in short-term government bonds makes no sense. Even owning a house plain outright without any kind of debt doesn't make sense, because house prices also do not increase by 7% year over year. Stocks can make some kind of sense. If you've got technology stocks, the S&P 500 only grows with monetary expansion. Tech stocks tend to outgrow. Tech stocks tend to do better than monetary expansion. And then, of course, we've got Bitcoin, which tends to also outgrow monetary expansion. Property can work, but it only works if you've got a lot of debt on it, and if the debt is cheaper than 7% per annum. So if you've got a lot of debt and that debt devalues over time because monetary expansion is faster than what you pay for that money, then you tend to make a pretty good ROI on your equity. So if you've got a lot of debt on your house, that's a good investment. If you own your house outright, that's a bad investment. At least simply just according to the numbers, right? Completely ignoring lifestyle and stresses, etc. If you just look financially at it, owning a house with debt makes sense. And so this is the problem with the next generation, right? The next generation will have a harder and harder time accumulating wealth. There's very few opportunities to beat the system still, right? Having a super high savings rate, of course, helps. Investing into high-risk things like the Nasdaq 100 and like Bitcoin can help. And then another lever is potentially to use geographic arbitrage, as in to earn money globally. What I do here with the premium membership, right? I get premium membership payments from all around the world, mainly from high-income countries. And then I spend this in a country with a low price level. So I live mainly in Malaysia now.
Here's the problem with crypto YouTube. People promoting becoming degen or buying 100x coins. That's what gives clicks, but that's not what's going to bring you forward. I refuse to take money from centralized exchanges. I refuse to take money from crypto projects. I refuse to pump and dump a coin and filling up my pockets in the background. I don't do any of this. Instead, I share my knowledge in the form of tutorials in the premium membership. So that's content that won't do well on YouTube, but that builds up skill over time. You can also directly contact me over there. You can directly pick my brain. Feel free to check it out. TheBitcoinStrategy.com is the link.
So if somebody from the US buys the premium membership because they've got high purchasing power, and then I spend this in a country where prices are low, I can also have a very high savings rate. And the next generation, the people that don't want to completely suffer from the system, our kids that potentially want to have a family maybe of 3 or maybe even of 4 kids, that want to have a big house, that want to live in a good neighborhood, etc., they have to pull pretty much all of those levers. So you need geographic arbitrage, you need very highly skilled labor that's globally competitive. You need to invest this high savings rate into something that beats monetary expansion. And when you do all of those things, then you can potentially become one of the winners. Then you don't feel like you're suffocating. Then you can potentially have a lifestyle that's better than the lifestyle of your parents. Because this is what I believe most people in my generation are suffering from. Most people in my generation have a lower living standard than their parents. What this means in turn is that they never feel ready to have a family, right? If their parents already had a house, if their parents had already 2 cars, then this seems to feel like the benchmark, right? It seems to feel like the minimum that we need to achieve in order to have children ourselves, in order to be safe enough. But if we don't reach that, then we never feel ready, and so we never have families. And so this is simply what I'm going to tell my kids, right? I tell them, you have to use geographic arbitrage, you need to have a job at least in the top 10% of earners, and you have to invest your money into something that beats monetary expansion. You have to bet on the stuff that has some kind of risk, but of course you can still diversify, right? You can buy the Nasdaq 100, you don't have to pick the one stock that outperforms. You can buy Bitcoin, you don't have to buy the one altcoin that outperforms. I'll also tell them that they don't need to buy any property. The property market as a whole globally is probably not going to do too well because demographics globally are going to go down, right? People will have less and less children. When you've got less and less people around, but you've got still the same number of houses, and of course house prices go down. You have to be very selective if you want to buy a property. You have to buy this maybe in the city center where you can't build many more houses. You have to buy this in a country where you don't yet suffer from the demographic issue, right? Maybe because there's a lot of immigration from outside, or maybe because it's a growing country and the next generation still has a better living standard than the prior generation and they still feel safe enough to bring children in this world. So you want to be buying something where demand is growing over time, right? And property demand globally is likely going to shrink as the population is shrinking. And so that's the problem with investing, right? Returns are very much concentrated in just a few assets. If you buy 100 random assets, chances are that your 100 assets are on average going to underperform the index because it's only a few stocks that take most of the gains. It's a winner takes most game. And that's why buying just the index usually is fine if the index is already beating monetary expansion. Right now that's true for tech stocks. Let's see how this actually develops in the next 20 years. If it's still the tech stocks, but you can definitely not play it safe anymore. You can definitely not just buy short-term government bonds or gold and still think that you're getting ahead. And again, getting ahead is a pre-requirement because on average, the next generations will have it worse than the prior generations, at least relative to the owners of capital. So they will always feel like they're falling behind. They never feel like they're doing well. They might objectively do somewhat well, right? They might objectively have maybe more technological gadgets, etc. But probably in terms of expectations and probably in terms of the people that really have capital, it doesn't feel like you're getting anywhere. So again, let's sum up the levers. It's learning a skill that's globally competitive. It's making money from customers in high-income countries. It's spending that money in low-income countries. And as a consequence of the high savings rate from that setup, you want to invest all of that money into assets that tend to outperform monetary expansion. And that can be highly levered property, that can be tech stocks, that can be Bitcoin, but it's probably not short-term bonds, it's probably not gold. If you found this useful, feel free to give this a like, it helps the channel grow. Feel free to also subscribe, I publish videos regularly. Feel free to also join our Telegram, there's a Telegram link down below. Looking very much forward to chatting with you. Cheers!